Well, international borders are opening up today after 6 months of national lockdown. Travelers from high-risk countries are still barred from entering the country. But our reporters in Johannesburg, Cape Town and KwaZulu-Natal, this in Durban, are out checking the situation at our main international airports and border posts. Heidi Jockers is at the OR Tambo International Airport. We also have Monique Botlock at the Cape Town International Airport. And Jason Thathia is at the Golela border between Swaziland and South Africa. We talk to them now. Good morning to you, colleagues. I want to start with you, Heidi, just in terms of today being that D-Day that we know international, of course, borders will be opening up. OR Tambo usually want to be busy. What are you seeing then in terms of whether, South Africans or even tourists have started, coming in or out of the country?
It's very quiet at the moment, Tumelo, but we must indicate that there is a flight that's expected to land at about 8:30 this morning from Frankfurt. We know there are about 300 passengers that are actually expected to land from Frankfurt at 8:30 this morning. I'm going to ask my cameraman, Giv, to actually show you the arrivals board. I've never seen it so empty in my entire life, but we are seeing a couple of flights that are landing. Harare, Frankfurt, Zurich, Lusaka, Addis Ababa, Dubai and Harare are expected to land. The last one seems to land at about 7:45 this evening. So it does seem like it's a bit of a busy day compared to what we've seen in the last 6 months from no international travels, or only some of the repatriation flights coming through. So we do understand that it is going to start picking up, of course, only from the countries that are allowed into South Africa, and if it is from a high-risk country, it's only for business purposes, or if you're a diplomat, or repatriation processes, repatriation purposes. But we will be going further up later on to see how the departure section looks like. But just speaking to people on the ground so far, it seems to be quite a quiet day in terms of departures, but arrivals, as you see, there are a number of flights set to take off later today.
Well, indeed, Heidi, I have never seen it so empty, particularly even when the list comes up with a number of cities. Absolutely a culture shock for me. But Monique, I have to move to you. You are in Cape Town. What are you seeing there? The numbers almost similar in terms of less cities there listed for arrival, but also is the airport empty or busy at this time?
Well, compared to what we are used to seeing pre-lockdown, it's empty, although we are seeing those passengers for the domestic flights still moving in and out, moving around the airport. But for anyone who's used to seeing Cape Town International Airport, what it used to look like, it will be, as you mentioned, a culture shock for them as well, because it is quieter than usual. But we've just heard from the airport that something exciting to look forward to a little later today. We will be seeing the first international flight coming in to Cape Town International Airport. That's a little later this afternoon, and we'll be seeing a special aviation edition, something to look forward to for our viewers at home, and also for those of us who haven't seen something like this happening before. I have been told from some airport officials that they themselves are buzzing with activity, just trying to get that ready, and we can confirm that it will be an Emirates flight that will be landing here in Cape Town, and we will then be seeing those first international visitors touching down here in Cape Town. So that's definitely something that we are keen to check out, and keen to see just what exactly this special aviation tradition is all about.
Well, Monique, I have to say, quite exciting. Jason Thathia, good morning to you. I move to you now. You are at the Golela border, just between Swaziland and South Africa. Just give us some clarity first here, because it has been, I suppose, quite confusing, even for some of our viewers. I know that local, rather domestic flights had been opened. Did this include regional flights as well? I mean, if you are within the SADC region, were you able to still make your way in between South Africa, or only those borders opening up today with the rest of the international countries?
Ultimately, yeah. Well, Golela border post was slightly different. I think you could call it one of those protected border posts, especially when Cyril Ramaphosa had made that announcement in March of the closure of the land borders. Now, this one remained open for certain activities, and that includes, as you can see behind me, there's generally a lot of movement here as goods are transported across the borders from this side in Golela where we are now to Lavumisa, which is in Eswatini on the other side of this border, and there's generally quite a lot of cargo that's moved around. So that has remained functional during the time when the other borders had closed, as well as anyone that was seeking emergency medical treatment, for example, and then obviously, as you know, the essential services workers. But the difference now, as this border has just reopened and it's opened at 7 o'clock, is that now people that are not necessarily here for essential services, people that want to come through for leisure travel, anyone else that needs to make their way through can do that. There hasn't been a lot of activity just yet, apart from the trucks that I've shown you, but that has been a constant here. But we've seen a few people come through on foot, some people pushing a few small goods in wheelbarrows. That was just after the border post opened at 7 o'clock. Prior to COVID-19 and the lockdown, there was a fair amount of movement here. It's estimated that about 700,000 people moved back and forth commuting to work across the border each year. Works out to roughly about 2,000 people, just shy of 2,000 people per day. But it seems that it's going to take some time before that gets moving again, if we're just looking at what we've seen in the past 20 minutes or so.
Indeed, Jason. Heidi, back to you now at the OR Tambo International Airport. I mean, I heard there from Monique Motlog in Cape Town saying that Emirates is rather one of the first flights expected to land in South Africa, this being an international flight, of course. Do you know of any, other airlines which will be, of course, be operational today, as we saw that list there, a few cities making their way in and out of SA?
Well, we do know that specifically at OR Tambo International Airport, it is not Emirates that's going to be the first to land here. That flight that I spoke to you about earlier, that's coming from Frankfurt, that's a Lufthansa flight that's going to be landing at about 8:30 this morning. So we are seeing airlines coming through, even though this is not new to some of the airlines, because we do know a lot of them are bringing in cargo and facilitating repatriation flights. This specific flight, I would say, that from Lufthansa is going to be bringing in, we're not sure if it's going to be tourists or if it's going to be South Africans that were in Germany, or if anybody connected via Germany to come to South Africa from any other country. But we do know that that is going to be a Lufthansa flight that's landing at 8:30. We know that's the first flight, one could say, that's coming into South Africa under level 1, allowing for international travel. That's going to be landing once international travel is allowed. So there's definitely going to be more flights coming in, but that's the specific airline that we are seeing, the first one that's going to be coming in at 8:30. So it's a good move for these airlines. They are desperate for passengers to book on these airlines, given the fact that they were not able to operate for 6 months, Tumelo, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and air travel was, of course, heavily impacted by COVID-19. So
Absolutely.
These airlines, we're seeing a lot of them taking out notices to say they will be coming in, they will be resuming flights on specific days, specifically OR Tambo, Cape Town and Durban.
Right, and moving to you, Monique, I mean, we know that Cape Town is a tourist hub. This is a city that prides itself in trading where, as far as tourists are concerned. Seeing that list, 57 countries which are banned for movement, either tourists or anyone coming from those countries into SA and vice versa. South Africans going into those countries, I mean, due to them being high-risk countries. What is then the impact of that on Cape Town as a city, even particularly for the Cape Town International Airport? Because, I mean, it's known for its movement as a hub for international movement.
Especially when we're looking at those tourists who are trying to escape the winter in their countries. You speaking of tourists from Europe, America, these are the tourists that generally come to South Africa, especially to Cape Town during those December, or November, December, January months, specifically for our beaches, for the sunny weather and the warm weather. And this is definitely something that I want to speak to some officials officials in tourism who will also be here for that inaugural flight a little later, as well as MECs for economic opportunities and the City of Cape Town's tourism and economic MACO members, just to find out from them what type of possible impact these countries or these countries being excluded from entering or from being allowed to travel to South Africa, what this could mean to our tourism economy, to our local tourism economy, because I know that a few weeks ago when I was in the Northern Cape officials over there and tourism, those in the tourism sector, they were eager and excited to welcome many of these tourists from these countries that are on this list. So it would be interesting to find out from them just what their thoughts are now after hearing from the minister following the briefing yesterday, to hear from them their thoughts and the possible impact that they are expecting now with the warm summer months approaching.
All right, Monique, let me conclude this conversation now with Jason Thathia. Jason, you are still at that border between South Africa and Swaziland. I'm keen to know, colleague, as to whether some of those measures have been implemented while, of course, the border has been operational. We did hear from government that even though you are crossing the border, you still need to provide, proof or a certificate, a medical document that shows that you had tested for COVID in the last 72 hours at least, and you did test negative. Were those, measures still implemented, even though that border seemingly had been busy throughout this lockdown?
Yeah, there were very strict measures in place at this border, particularly at the time, as I mentioned, when this one remained open while the others had been closed. There were quite a few precautions. In fact, we had come here in March when that had happened and even gone inside and driven our vehicle inside, and there was quite a rigorous, there was a screening process that took place, and that has continued as well. And those precautions still need to be taken now, and I think that's something that government has also been reiterating, that as much as it is level 1 and these borders are now open, it doesn't mean that people can be lax as they make their way in from one country and into the from one country to the other country. And in fact, even as you stand here at the border, there's a sign, rather a billboard with the Premier's face on it, and it just speaks of how we need to keep COVID-19 out of KZN. And I think that really just sums up the types of precautions that people need to be taking as they move in and out of Eswatini and into KwaZulu-Natal, and obviously vice versa.
All right, then, Jason Thathia at the Golela border between Swaziland and South Africa, Monique Motlok at the Cape Town International Airport, and Heidi Jockers at the OR Tambo International Airport. Thank you so much, colleague.